But there's one thing about your story I really would love to get a little more clarity around, and that's
Sure.
the limiting belief, the story that we make things mean, right? So especially when we're kids, something happens and we make it mean something, and we carry that, some of us, for the rest of our lives. And it
Yeah.
winds up, keeping us from our best lives, from our most badass selves.
Mm.
So you made it
Yeah.
mean, your dad leaving, you made it mean that,
Oh man, so many things. Okay,
yeah.
so what you're talking about is what I call the framework for freedom. And
Mm-hmm.
that's right there in chapter 1 of the book, Permission to Offend. So in that chapter, I give you a bunch of diagrams and stories and examples. But for me, when my father gave me to my godmother and asked her, like, hey, will you look after this kid, keep her alive, make sure she doesn't die until I get my life together,
Mm-hmm.
I made it mean that I wasn't good enough,
Right.
that I wasn't worth fighting for, that I wasn't worth doing everything that you possibly could, making all the sacrifices to raise me, that I wasn't good enough.
Right.
And that's
And
just not true.
of course, it's not true. And so, what I want to know, because so many people out there, I'm sure, can relate. In fact, your story can relate to some people I know in my personal life.
Mm.
And so, we have these limiting beliefs, we have these stories, and it's one thing to recognize them, but how do you actually, either do you get rid of them? Do you replace them?
Mm.
How do you make it stick?
Yeah. So I first want to neutralize the story and I want to take the emotional charge and meaning out of it.
Mm,
And then I ask myself, like, is this the most useful story? How does this story help me?
mhm.
It's not helpful for me to think that I wasn't good enough or lovable enough or enough in any way, shape, or form for my father want to get it together.
Yeah.
And also, it's not, in my opinion, it's not a fair story because, as I said, my father was an addict.
Mm,
And unless you've ever dealt with addiction, you have no idea the stronghold that it has over the person's life. And I
right.
know that there will be some people that argue, yeah, but some people break free from addiction. And why couldn't he? Listen, I don't know. I'm not him. I you have to look at each person's circumstance on the individual. My father lost his sister when they were kids playing. This was back in the day. They used to ride elevators, the
Mhm.
elevator surf. And she got schooled. She was on the top of the elevator and they were all there. Do you know the trauma of watching your sister get crushed to death by an elevator and then your parents never wanting to talk about it and acting like nothing?
Wow.
Could you imagine? Like, I can't even imagine.
Yeah.
So that's so we have to have compassion and empathy for ourselves and for the other people involved.
Yeah.
Then we neutralize. Then we ask, is this a helpful story? And
Mm-hmm.
then in my life, I'm always looking for stories that I can amplify. What's
Mm.
the best story that I can tell myself? So, the story that I chose to tell myself after I came to grips and terms with it, which I wish had been sooner than later, but it was much later in life, was that, man, my dad loved me so much and he wanted the best for me so much that he gave me away. And he had to live with that decision. He
Mm.
had to live and confront his inadequacy because here's the other thing. I did see my dad growing up. So it's not like I never saw him again.
Right.
And imagine I now live in a nice neighborhood. I
Mm-hmm.
now go to private school, excuse me, what he could never have provided for me. I now go to private school. So every time I come and visit you, my hair is done, my clothes are nice, I am clean, I smell good, I have dance classes, I get trips to Puerto Rico. I have the life that all your other kids don't have because he had other children and they were not as well off as I was, right? Well,
Mm.
whoever raised them did not get the golden ticket that I got. It's not to say that they weren't loved because
Sure.
I know my sister was well loved and I have a good relationship with her.
Sure.
Um, but if you look at and my oldest brother from my mother's side, remember there was three over there. I have tons of brothers and sisters, and they were all kind of dispersed. He always says Rachel was the princess. Out of all of
Mm.
us, she was the one. I get emotional about him because he's in a bad situation right now.
Aw.
But he says, out of all of us, Rachel was the best one. And the only way that I could be here today and I could be the best one was because my father made that selfless choice. Maybe it was selfish in the moment. Maybe for him, it was like, listen, I can't take care of this kid. I'm grieving the loss of the love of my life. And my mother was the love of my father's life.
Yeah.
Everybody knows that. He said that over and over again. My father lost the love of his life. He's grieving her death. He's confronting his own mortality, because you have to remember, Jennifer, that this was happening back in the 80s, where they would not even, funeral homes wouldn't even take bodies.
Oh, I read that.
If the death certificate said AIDS. And for that reason, my mother's death certificate said natural causes, so that a funeral home would take her. So my father loses the love of his life. He has to face his own mortality. He didn't know that he was more of a carrier than a victim of AIDS, right? And ultimately, it wasn't AIDS that took him. It was prostate cancer. Go figure. Yeah. So, and that's the thing about disease too, right? Some people are carriers. They don't really ever express symptoms. And then other people, they just get exposed to it, like my mother, and she died within 6 months. But he didn't know that. So he's looking down the barrel of a gun and facing his own mortality. What if, and this is a story I could tell myself, much better than he gave me up for he didn't love me, much better than he didn't want me, much better than I wasn't good enough. What if to him, he was thinking he's going to die.
Yeah.
And he doesn't know if he's going to if he's going to die in 6 months or 6 years. Or I think he ended up living 13 years. He ended up living 13 more years, but he did not know that in that moment.
And
he did the best that he could. So the story I chose to tell myself was, my dad wanted the best. And he did the hardest thing, and he gave me up.
Amazing.
And he had to, I can't imagine how difficult it must have been for my father to see me thrive, knowing that he had nothing to do with that.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my God.